Alright, so I know that this game has run its course for the most part, but I think I have a lot to add to it. This game is pretty much untouched when it comes to proper guides. I see a lot of new players in the game, and I just got back into playing a lot after taking a break. So I'm going to teach you methods for fighting abnormal titans. If you haven't already, go watch my video on techniques for fighting mindless titans first, and then come back to this video. Alright, so some quick notes before starting. I will not be using any combat or movement upgrades in this tutorial. I also don't use shift lock, and I don't recommend that you use it either. This guide will also assume that you already watched the first video on fighting mindless titans. Starting off with divers and stompers. The methods for fighting them are very similar. To quickly mention what not to do, we do not want to be anywhere near the ground when fighting them. This means you do not want to use any leg orbits or leg chops when fighting them. Stomps and dives can still stun you even if they don't directly hit you. Staying away from the ground prevents stompers from hitting you at all, while divers are a little bit more tricky. If you know a diver is about to dive, the easiest way to deal with it is to just make a lot of distance or use impulse and dodge. However, if you don't have any upgrades, you can launch yourself away from the Titan's body to make enough distance to where you do not get hit. If you manage to hook onto something, your hook will stay even if you get stunned too. So if you hook onto the wall, for example, even if you get stunned, just keep your hook in the wall and it'll pull you out of the danger. Both divers and stompers cannot actually grab you with their arms, so you only have to worry about their mouths, dives, and stomps. Both types run at a speed of 25, which means your cart can outrun them. Now on to techniques for killing them. I will start with blinding them. Both Titan types hold their head at an upward angle. This makes it a little bit more difficult to hit their eyes. All you have to do is aim for the very tip of their head, and you can easily blind them. If you go any lower, it is easy to get mouth grabbed. I will quickly mention that blinding a stomper will make it stand still, which means if you blind a stomper in a horde, you will have to lead that horde away first to get the kill. If you do not have any upgrades, I highly recommend that you blind them first. Now for orbiting. It is the same technique for both of them. You will have to orbit much tighter than if it was a mindless titan. But remember, you can get closer because they can't grab you with their arms. Basically, instead of swinging out further to avoid being grabbed like you would with a mindless titan, you are going to have to always keep a hook in the titan until you get behind them. Make sure you're boosting the entire time. Here's a clip of me using the same techniques on a diver. Moving on to Aberrants. They are the most dangerous when they're hiding inside of a horde. Make sure to keep a red or black flare up so you know when one is there. Again, blinding is always the safest option. However, Aberrants have the fastest recovery out of all the Titan types. They will only be blinded for about 3 seconds before they're fully regenerated. Also, for some reason, chopping their legs just completely unanchors them, so I would not really recommend it. Their only attack is a dive that is very easy to avoid. On that same note, they do not have the ability to mouth grab you, meaning as long as you have hand cut off cooldown, you can always escape them if they grab you. The orbit is a lot like the orbit for divers and stompers. I will mention though, because they are so small, it is more difficult to build up speed and deal damage. Crawlers, in my opinion, the most dangerous. Along with spinners, they are faster than your cart. Only a black horse can outrun them. Now, because of the angle of a crawler's nape, this makes it difficult to orbit. But don't forget that you can use any high place to drop straight down onto their nape. This is still dangerous though, with how fast they are. If you have it, super jump is very useful in getting that perfect angle. You can use houses, giant trees, and the wall. If you blind a crawler, aim for the very top of their head, just like for a diver or a stomper. For the orbit, always hook onto the top of their head. You are going to use that same tight swing method to orbit around to the back of them. Keep in mind that crawlers tend to be very janky and you're taking a risk when doing this. It is very easy to get mouth grabbed. Once you are behind the crawler, aim for the top back of its head and you'll hit the nape. Another method for crawlers is to hook onto the very top of their head and let yourself be launched directly behind them. This will line you up with their nape at a safe angle to get the kill. On to everyone's favorite, spinners. Spinners spawn in looking like a mindless titan. A tip for identifying spinners is that they can only ever be 15 meters tall, which is the max height for a titan. So if you ever see a tall mindless titan, just know it could be a spinner. This means you should avoid leg orbiting larger mindless titans until you're sure if they're a spinner or not. They are basically a supercharged stomper. They also stomp moving and stand in place when blinded. The same tricks for escaping the stun effect apply from earlier. Try to hook onto something if you know you're going to get kicked. It is very easy to get stun locked to death by a spinner. I will mention that the spinner orbit is very inconsistent, especially without upgrades. You should basically only blind it, even if you're maxed out. It is just too dangerous in a real campaign to consistently orbit spinners. But it's basically the same as when you're trying to orbit a stomper, but you're trying to get behind them even faster. I would use impulse if you have it, because building enough speed to kill them is very difficult because of how fast they're moving towards you. Alright, that concludes the video. Let me know if I left out anything important. It has been a while since I played. Also let me know if you have any video ideas, because content for this game has been very dry lately. The next guide will cover some of the basics for PvP, because the majority of the players are still pretty terrible at it.